Thank you all. We'll take an action to open our closed session.
I'll make a motion to reopen the meeting.
Second?
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by
Secretary
saying
Brooks,
aye.
did you
Aye.
catch? Hang on a second. Secretary Brooks, did you hear who made the motion and second, or do you need me to repeat that?
Stephanie,
If people could please
Commissioner Musit moved
be quiet
the
so we can
action.
convene our meeting. Thank you.
And a second was,
Me.
okay, by Vice President Benny. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That action carries. I will now adjourn then the Committee of the Whole and move on then to our full board meeting here on April 3rd. So I'd like to convene the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board with and I'd also like to note that I have appointed interim Secretary Brooks to take over for Secretary Ringel, who's away. Also, I'll note that Council Rice is not here, and Commissioner Thompson is. Secretary, please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Rucker.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Menz.
Here.
Commissioner Alper.
Present.
Vice President Benny.
Here.
President Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum present.
Thank you. The action carries. I'll take a motion to approve our agenda.
Second?
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. Take approval of our minutes from March 20th.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to reports of appointees of outside boards, commissions, and committees. Anybody have anything to share with us? Yes, Vice President Benny.
Thank you, President Forty. 10-second update. There was a Board of Estimate and Taxation meeting on March 27th, and we received a report from the City Assessor's Office on the property tax, the 2024 property tax situation, I'll say. So I know we're going to be getting a similar presentation here from the City Assessor's Office. And that one, the one we had at the PET was presented in the context of city wards. So I hope that the one we get for us is in districts. That's what they did last year. That's it. Thanks.
Is that all? Commissioner Menz.
Yes, I attended the Neighborhood Revitalization Policy Board for the first time last week, and apparently I'm the vice chair now. So based on this, you have to have an elected official serve on those committees. So I'll be learning a lot about how this works. Pretty interesting policy board that has a lot of funds available to it for the neighborhoods. So it really kind of opened my eyes to different ways to think about how the neighborhoods can support parks and also how we can sort of tap that resource. So looking forward to it.
Superintendent Bangora.
Thank you, President Forney and Board. I wanted to share, we had a great meeting today. Representative Omar stopped by today and with her team, and we met in the River Room, and it's really in regards to North Commons. And as we know, we've received $2 million from Representative Omar through the HUD program, and so we've had multiple. And what's unique about North Commons is that we have city, county, federal, philanthropic, park board dollars that goes into this incredible project. We are on our way right now. Again, we heard the Senator Champion is going to carry the folder, and Representative Lee and Representative Abaje, but it's the first time I received a large check like this, but I wanted to share with you at least that she presented the $2 million check to the park board personally to support this incredible program and this historic transformative.
Up higher.
Yeah.
Yay.
So this is what we received, and it was just a nice presentation. We had a great time to meet with her and talk to her about the projects she's working on, so we're very excited. So we're very excited about that. So, but just wanted to share with you the great meeting we had today with our representative, and we are grateful for the support of Representative Omar and all of our delegation that have done some incredible work for us. So just want to share that. It's been 2 years since we stood at North Commons when it was announced to us, but this was just a formal way of showing the support for this project. So thank you very much.
Congratulations. And then I also want to announce that Commissioner Alper has stepped down from being on the alternate to the Riverview Corridor Committee, I think it's called, anyway, Transit Project. Anyway, and I'm pleased that Commissioner Olson is stepping up to be that alternate. So with that, I will then move to our consent agenda, and if somebody would like to move those 3 items, I would really appreciate it. Oh, are you,
I'd like to pull one.
oh, you would like to pull one, okay. Which one?
Yes, President Forney,
President.
I'd like to pull briefly Resolution 2024-73.
73, okay, great. All right, do we have a motion to move the other 2?
I'll move the remaining items in the consent agenda as a slate.
Okay, all
Second.
those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carry. Then on to Resolution 2024-73.
I'll move Resolution 2024-73. This is a resolution approving change order number 4 with Ebert Construction, Inc., contract number CON 0006302 for the Lake Harriet Bandshell and Refectory renovation project in the amount of $10,656 for a new contract total of $2,559,029.93.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Welcome. Director Swenson, would you like to speak to, or do you have some specific?
Just the main entrance was to maybe get an update on the status of the remaining elements of the project and also the items that maybe are still unfinished, but I know that there's some movement toward the finishing up the kiosk, the sailing shed, and the picnic shelter. I don't know what the name of it is. Thank you.
President Forney, Commissioner Abeni, you're correct. So I just, our marketing communications had a drone out and took some great photographs. So we'll be posting these to the webpage of the completed project. So that's the good news. Then as far as the kiosk, which you can see there, and let's go to the kiosk, the yacht club building, and then the covered seating or the picnic shelter area. Park Board trade staff will be doing repairs and painting those this summer as their time allows. And then the design team is completing bid documents to bid out the re-roof of those 3 buildings. Actually 4 buildings, because it's also the little kiosk just to the east of the boat landing. So that's the good news, and again, what we're trying to do with the re-roof is that we would wait to complete that work start that work until Bread and Pickle completes their season. We're done with the bandshell, and again, the yacht club, for the most part, would be shut down for the year. But we feel, our trade staff feel that they can do the small, minor repairs, paint during the season as time allows.
Vice President Abeni?
Thank you, President Forney. Okay, thank you, Mr. Swenson. I appreciate the update, and I would just comment too that the bandshell roof particularly, I know they worked on it all winter. It looks so great. The whole thing looks great, but the roof to me is just really pretty special. So I'm glad we deployed this, I think, really durable approach to that roof. Thank you.
Great.
Yes, and I'm going to ask, as far as the kiosk, will the plaques return?
President Forney, we'll have to find those plaques. So
Oh.
I'll if they're there, if we can remount them, we will, for sure. So
Great work, really. It's very, quite lovely. I drove by the other day. It's really handsome. Okay, of that resolution, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That action carries. On to our planning committee.
Yes, I'd like to move, from the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2023-250, resolution rejecting encroachment permit application for use of land in front of the subject property at 1261 West Minnehaha Parkway, encroaching upon parkland at West Minnehaha Parkway, located within Minnehaha Parkway Regional Trail.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay. There's one no. Okay, that action carries. On to our next item.
Also from the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2024-64, resolution approving renaming Farwell Park to Lorraine B. Smaller Park.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Not seeing any lights. Wait a second, Commissioner Menz.
Thank you, President Forney. This one has really been a difficult place for me to sort of engage and figure out how to accept this renaming. I mean, I think that Lorraine B. Smaller obviously did a lot for the community, but I've been really struggling with this as our entity and how we discuss naming and what we support and how we value the people who do the work in the parks, like Ms. Smaller did. But hearing from others who also did a lot of work, and also seeing people who are out in the community, not only our workers, but our volunteers who do work in these public spaces. And I wonder about the unintended consequence of naming this park after one individual instead of thinking about it as a community space. It's been really difficult for me to figure out what the right thing to do is here. And I'd love some advice from my colleagues, and I know that Commissioner Rucker's words at our last meeting prompted me to think that we should go forward and rename this park. But I think it is a very tenuous situation to rename parks for people in this time period, and how we do that is really important. And I don't know if we've really explored it as much as we should. We did try to speed this up in regards to figuring out how this could happen in a little bit faster way, and I know that the Smaller family is probably here and appreciates that. But I don't know if my colleagues had any other difficulty in considering this renaming, but I'll vote the way you all want to vote. But I do think it's something that we need to consider moving forward, how we do this.
Well, in response to that, in response to this, I never ever could possibly fill the shoes of our second district commissioner, Becca Thompson, who is not able to be here, but I will read what she shared with me. As the District 2 Commissioner, I am very grateful to have been connected to this family for the whole process of renaming, and that we were able to confirm the timing to get it accomplished now. I support the name change and regret I will not be able to vote myself, but hope that my colleagues will give their support to this good and worthy action. Thank you, Becca Thompson. Any other, Commissioner Rucker.
Yeah, for me, Mrs. Smaller was a beacon pillar of the north side of Minneapolis. She was a selfless person. She didn't want the light on herself. She'd rather have it on other people, where they can shine. And from her being selfless, you have many, many people out here that's shining in the neighborhoods, in our community, that are doing great things just because she chose to be the person who would help support. It's just her legacy is still shining. Even though she's not here anymore, her legacy is still shining because of what she did in the community. So I'm going to be voting 100% yes on this.
Commissioner Menz for a second time.
Thank you, Commissioner Rucker. I really do want to support and be supportive of people who are doing a lot for the park. I mean, it's hard there's so many people who are doing this great work for the parks. I'm going to vote yes. I want us to think about how we work through this, and I know we are. But even as I look out, there's lots of people who are deserving, so how we decide becomes really important.
Not seeing any other lights, we need to do a roll call, so if our secretary would please call the roll, I would appreciate it.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Aye.
Commissioner Rucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Musich,
Aye.
Commissioner Menz,
Aye.
Commissioner Alper,
Aye.
Commissioner Abeni,
Aye.
President Forney.
Aye.
It's unanimous. You have 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. That action carries. Hurrah, hurrah. On to our next resolution.
Yep. Also from the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2024-66, resolution approving temporary occupancy under Section 4F of the Transportation Act of 1966 for a City of Minneapolis Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP, project adjacent to and within Loring Park.
Second.
Thank you. All right. I don't, this is temporary, okay, so we will not need to do a roll call. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carried. On to Administration and Finance.
I'll move Resolution 2024-53. Resolution approving two one-year license agreements with Lime and Vio respectively for authorization to place equipment on MPRB property and permission to operate shared bike and scooter programs throughout the Minneapolis park system.
Second?
Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to our next resolution.
I'll move Resolution 2024-55. Resolution approving a parking license through April 2nd, 2029 with Northern Star Boy Scouts of America for parking facilities at 100 Federal Drive at Neiman Athletic Complex.
Second?
Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to our next item.
I'll move Resolution 2024-56. Resolution approving a parking license through April 2nd, 2029 with the Blake School for parking facilities at 400 Vineland Place, part of the Parade Complex in Minneapolis Sculpture Garden.
Second?
Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Oh, one nay. That action carries. On to our next resolution.
I'll move Resolution 2024-65. Resolution approving State of Minnesota Joint Powers Agreement with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board on behalf of the not Minneapolis Park, but Park Police Department.
Second?
Not seeing any lights. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On to Operations and Environment.
On behalf of the Operations and Environment Committee, I'll move Resolution 2024-60. This resolution adopting the revised Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Integrated Pest Management Policy.
Second?
Thank you. Not seeing any lights. Okay, Commissioner Schaefer.
My amendment that I submitted was included on the slate of proposed staff amendments towards the bottom, and I did not realize that. I had been working with staff in clarifying some of that language. So I will not be moving my amendment, but I would like to move the slate of the staff amendments.
Perfect, okay. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any discussion? Not seeing any lights? Oh, Vice President Abene?
Yeah, thank you. I just, sorry, it's a little gratuitous, but again, I appreciate so much the staff support on this and making these modifications. I just really appreciate it. I know you worked with, I think, 3 commissioners on some of this language, so thank you very much. At least 3 commissioners. Thanks.
Thank you. Not seeing any of, oh, Commissioner Menz?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I know that, thank you, President Forney, that the staff really did hear some of the value statements that, I mean, because this policy is a value statement around our pesticide use, and I know that this has been kind of a contentious issue over the years for certain, because, so I appreciate the staff adding some language to discourage the use of rodenticides. I know that that was a big piece of this process at the last meeting, so it's really great to feel heard by staff and allow us to work together. I do think that as a board, you know, we're trying to move to as few pesticides as we can possibly use. So anytime that we have an opportunity to put a little bit of a value statement in there, I mean, I would like strongly discourages, but I think we'll settle for discourages right now in an effort to make sure that we're not utilizing these chemicals in places where they can do harm, which we know that they will do harm. So even though we're going to have to use them, they're going to do some harm, and we have to be able to mitigate that harm as much as we can. But I appreciate the staff working with us. I hope that this is not an end document, that this is a policy that we will look at and review, and that hopefully we can get closer to that goal of as minimal use as possible, which we are doing in a lot of areas.
Those in favor? No. We're moving on the amendments first. Okay, correct. Okay. So all those in favor of the amendment, please, amendments, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. On then to the amended resolution. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries as well. Well, speedy weedy that we are and everything, I am going to start with petitions and communications. We have 5 minutes until open time, and I will start with Commissioner Schaefer.
I will pass.
Okay, Commissioner Menz,
I'll pass.
Commissioner Musich,
I will also pass.
Commissioner Rucker,
Pass.
Commissioner Olson,
Sorry, got nothing. Pass.
Commissioner Elper.
Pass.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, you guys. Well, I will then just remind everybody that we do not. Oh, you get to go.
I'll pass, though. I'll pass.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to remind everybody that we do not have a full board meeting next, 2 weeks from now, but we have our budget retreat on April 15th, and then the following week, we will be having our full board. So just a reminder to everybody about that. And on
The
that,
meeting's on the 17th.
excuse me,
The 17th.
the 17th is the retreat.
Yes, you said the 15th.
Did I say the opposite? I'm sorry, or, sorry. Okay, well, with that clarification, I'm not going to adjourn the meeting. I'm just going to go into open time and read the rules, so I will read them slowly or something like that. Okay, so, thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during open time. Before we start, I want to provide an abbreviated version of the open time board rules. All individuals wishing to speak may call in before noon the day of the meeting to be placed on the agenda, or can sign up at the board meeting prior to the start of open time. I will be calling on people on the sign-up list only. Open time will, for public input shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes with a time limit to be allocated by myself, the president. Please watch the timer up here to be considerate of others here to speak and stay within your allotted time. During open time, public testimony will be given without debate and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. 2 types of items not appropriate for open time in order to protect the privacy of all are pending litigation and personnel issue. Please refrain from commenting on this specific personnel issue. We do not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone. So please ensure that all comments you make tonight comply with this policy. The board made the decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed. So only those signed up to speak may only speak for their own allotted amount of time. We also request that each speaker provide his or her name and address. And we have 8 people, so I'm going to assign 2 minutes per person. And if somebody is not here because I'm starting early, I will call your name again. Mitchell, I'm sorry, might be Anderson, but I'm not sure. And then the next person is Matt Gassman. Welcome, Mitchell.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Mitchell Clendenin. I live on 30th in California, and I'm a lifelong resident of Minneapolis, but I fear that might end soon because of the cost of living in this city. There was a recent study published in the news. It found that to live comfortably in Minneapolis with no kids, you need to make at minimum $44.98 an hour. In negotiations, our wage asks don't even get us to that point. Did you know that most of our members need to have a second source of income just to make enough to provide the basics for their family? When your staff are forced to make the decision between getting rest and spending time with their family, or on the other hand, have to work to make sure there's enough food on the table, this is the daily reality our members face. Not only do the families, but the whole city suffers for it. I know most of you had nothing to do with the years of stagnant wages. But I'll tell you what, you do have the power to fix it. You have the power to embody the goals on that back wall. You have the power to directly affect hundreds of families. And you have the power to make sure that one job is enough. I yield my time.
Out of respect for everybody, if you could do what we call the Quaker wave instead of clapping, I'd really appreciate it. So Matt Gassman and then Abigail Onsor, I'd appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Matt Gassman. I'm a horticultural crew leader, and my address is 580 County Road B2. I'm here to just share what I see when I look around at staff, and I see people who are really passionate about what they do and quite honestly care more than anyone else in the city. And you'll also hear from those folks that some of them are on food assistance. I've heard from people who say they'd like to start a family, but that's financially out of reach for them. Or people who it's in reach, but only if they drive a 20-year-old rust bucket and run a paper route for work. It's really, people are hurting basically, and it's, inflation is kind of hurting everyone, and it's really time to make people whole. I know it's a lot easier to plan parks, and there's a lot of fun things about maybe your job. This may be not it, but we really need your help. And really, I'm just looking for someone to care about us. We see service areas that are just a few years old, and there's shipping containers behind it because there's no place for maintenance equipment. It's just, you add it all up and you just wonder, does anyone care? So I'm asking you to care. We got people who really need your help. Thanks.
Abigail, and then after that is Nick Grube. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing you correctly.
Hello, my name is Abigail. My address is 3010 Sumter Avenue North, and I lived in Minneapolis for 25 years. I'm a bus operator for Metro Transit and a member of ATU 1005. I also use the park system frequently. I'm here with several other ATU members in solidarity with the park workers and LIUNA 363. As bus drivers, we are the circulation system of the city, and through our service to the community, we experience many of the same safety concerns as our brothers and sisters in LIUNA 363. We know that not having supportive contract language to protect workers from safety hazards is a recipe for disaster. These workers have been trying to warn you about serious health and safety hazards in the field in which they are experts. Instead of finding creative solutions to protect them, you accuse them of weaponizing safety. They have to choose between pushing through potentially unsafe situations at work or calling for risk assessment and risking retaliation. The parks in Minneapolis are absolutely incredible, not because of you, but because of the dedication and skill of the park workers, some of whom stuck it out for a few years of seasonal pay at $11 an hour, to now be the stellar caretakers that they are today. It's time for you to do your job and recognize that you can't have healthy, robust parks without healthy workers. They need affordable, equitable health care, and it sounds like they found a solution for you that would save you money. They need a livable wage that counteracts inflation because working two jobs is completely unreasonable. And they require contract language and training that supports them to determine if their health and safety are in danger when asked to clear homeless encampments, as well as in their everyday duties.
Abigail?
ATU 1005 is 100% in solidarity with our brothers and sisters at LIUNA 363, and their fight is our fight. As the heartbeat of the city, you better believe we will be talking, we will be sharing, we will be spreading the word about the park board's inability to protect these hardworking community members.
Thank you.
We are watching. Do the right thing.
Nick, and then Casey. Rosie?
Thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. My name is Nick Grebe. I live at 35th and Buchanan Street Northeast. I have been an arborist for 20 years and a resident of Minneapolis for longer. And I've worked for NPRB in the Forestry Department for 5 years. My wife Bridget and I are active and passionate about our community. We chose to raise our daughters here in the city. We enjoy walks along tree-lined sidewalks and frequent the 3 parks near our home, all of which are maintained by 363 members. While I'm a management team at a large tree company, I learned finance always finds the money for what they want and never for what they think is unnecessary. 363 members work hard to maintain our essential urban forest and parks and deserve a fair wage. You need to budget for us. Thank you.
Casey, and then next is Amelia Marquez.
Hi, my name is Casey Roser. I'm also an arborist in Minneapolis for Local 363. I used to actually be a social worker in Minneapolis, and I lived in Minneapolis for many years. Now I live at 363 Fry Street in St. Paul. I actually, thought that coming into arboriculture and working in the trades would be more of a living wage than I had as a social worker, and I've been really disheartened to still be working paycheck to paycheck. I have a 2-year-old son, and I don't get to see him every other weekend because I have to work on my own business, doing a second job every other weekend just to pay the bills, just to scrape by. And this is one of the most dangerous jobs you can have, and we're getting paid. I used to mentor youth and bring them to show them different job opportunities. Other trades are paying in the 30s an hour for just an apprenticeship, just a basic, even a pre-apprenticeship program in other trades. And we can't even have a living wage here. I grew up in a rural area near Austin, Minnesota. I saw that they just posted for a tree trimmer, not even a certified arborist, and they're paying up to $40 an hour in that rural area where the cost of living is much less. And I'm scraping by here, and we're sacrificing our bodies are on the line, and you need to do the right thing. Thank you.
Amelia, if you're here, and then Amy, Ellie, I think is, or Ellis, I think. Okay, sorry.
Piali, Manam, my relatives. My name is Amelia Marquez, and I reside at 2118 Como Avenue, number 5 in St. Paul. I'm a proud member of Minneapolis Federation of Teachers 59 and honorably indigenous to this wonderful place we call Turtle Island. I have the honor of sharing a wall in my classroom with my dear colleague, Commissioner Menz. Thank you, Commissioner Menz, and all of you for your work. Board members, the reality of our world is that our structure cannot sustain itself without workers. It was just 4 years ago that the workers behind me, our union siblings, were considered essential workers, heroes, and the backbone of our communities. I rely on our park workers. My students rely on our park workers. You rely on our park workers. I would give our parks less than a week to survive without these workers. We saw this in a larger scale during our last large federal government shutdown when national parks were destroyed and harmed due to the shutdown. I urge all of you, listen to your workers, support their contract demands, give them what they need to continue to support our communities and the next generation of Minnesotans who will rely on these workers just like us. Thank you.
The next person is Amy, and then after that, I'm really sorry, I cannot read your name, but I think it's Alex, but I'm not sure.
I'm
Susan?
Amy, sorry.
Okay, so
I'm
Amy is now.
Yes, I'm here representing Lundstrom Performing Arts. We're on North 2nd Street over here, been in the community about 95 years. So I'm just here in favor of the initiative to rename Farwell Park to honor Lorraine Smaller. She was an incredible woman, an incredible force. We collaborated on many things with the Sinfonia Orchestra, but what remains with you is her passion for serving the youth of the community. She was incredible. I honor her, and I think it would be a great thing to name the park after beautiful Lorraine. Thank you.
Once again, I'm really sorry. It's the last name that's on our list, and I'm having a really hard, starts with an A.
Able Sondheim, maybe?
Did anybody get signed up that hasn't been called?
Maybe Abel Sondheim?
I'm not seeing anybody rising, and it looks like everybody who signed up has been acknowledged. So I thank you, and I will now close our open time, and I will then adjourn the full board, and we will move on to, what are we on to, planning? No, administration and finance.
Who are we? 363! Who are we? 363! Who are we? 363! Does Al do that work? No! Does Jennifer do that work? No! Does Jeremy do that work? No! Who does that work? We do the work! Who does that work? We do the work! Who does that work? We do the work! And who are we? 363! And who are we? 363! And who are we? 363! Does Al do that work? No! Does Jennifer do that work? No! Does Jeremy do that work? No! Who does that work? We do the work! Who does that work? We do the work! Who does that work? We do the work! There we go! Yeah, yeah!
I call to order Administration and Finance Committee. Secretary, can you please do the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer,
Here.
Commissioner Olson,
Here.
Commissioner Musich,
Present.
Co-Chair Thompson, absent Co-Chair Rucker.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you. Can I have a member?
I will move our agenda
There you go.
for Wednesday, April 3rd.
Any discussion? Seeing,
I'm sorry, I
I
can't hear over
moved,
here.
I moved the agenda,
Thank you.
and we've had a call for discussion.
yeah, is there any discussion? Seeing no lights, take a vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? That passes. Can I have a member approve the minutes?
I'll move the minutes for the Administration and Finance Committee on the minutes from March 20th, 2024.
Any discussion? See no lights. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? That passes. Can I have a member move resolution 2024-69?
I will move Resolution 2024-69. This is a resolution approving the memorandum of understanding between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and City of Minneapolis related to the construction, operations, and maintenance of new trails to connect park visitors to the new E-Line stops at Bedemakaska, part of Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park.
Any discussion? Seeing no lights. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? That passes. Looks like we have a study item with Director Wiseman.
Just so you know, you don't need to ask for abstentions.
Okay.
People need to know that they want to do that and make their indication before you take the vote.
Okay. All right.
Good evening, Chair Rucker and Commissioners. I'm here tonight to present the third of 3 study reports in preparation for our budget retreats that begin on April 17th and May 1st. So you're going to be receiving documents, 4 documents. The first document is the 2025 and 2026 budget issues. This document includes issues that would impact the financial condition of the park board. In addition, that's in addition to the directions set forth by the board's 2023 to 2026 strategic directions. I'm going to walk through this document briefly with you. The next document is our budget action funding needs. So for 25 and 26, they represent the final 2 years of the board adopted strategic directions, performance goals, and priority comprehensive plan strategies. So we have asked staff to go through and identify any potential budget needs associated with completing those tasks. The third document I'm going to be going over with you, and which is the most important document of the night, is I'm going to present to you the 2025 and 2026 general fund budget needs. When we get there, I'll state this again, but this is kind of fully loading all the potential things that could be funded through 25 and 26. So it may be a little bit of sticker shock, but it's estimates, and then as we get into the budget retreat process, that's when this list will be refined and decisions will be made regarding our property tax levy request. The final document is board staff directions. And so these are resolutions that have been passed by the board that directed staff to complete some work. And so I'm not going to be presenting that verbally. It's just there for you to have. And it shows the estimated hours that were directed towards those items. So our 2025 and 2026 issues list. The first item is staff care, hiring, and retention. So just as you heard through open time, if we are to be considered a premier place to work, we will need to be able to consider increased annual wage increases in the near term, as well as retention and hiring strategies. Staffing levels, the information is on the document, and it really is around what things are popping up that we may need some additional staffing around. And so outdoor park supervision has become kind of a trend in needing more outdoor supervision in our open spaces and the outsides of our recreation centers. So there's some narrative on that. And then data requests have increased both pretty much nationally for government agencies. And so there's some potential needs for the data request area, which could be solved through contractual services or staffing. Capital investments, these you're all very familiar with. Some of the new ones that I'll highlight is Phelps Recreation Center. We have been approached by them, and they are wanting to extend for one last 5-year lease with us at Phelps Park, and then their plan is to be moving into the Kmart. Oh. Nobody heard. Okay, nobody heard that. They're going to be moving to a different location. So in 2029, it would be in July of 2029, we would take back over operations of Phelps Park. So there's some capital investment needs around that, as well as staffing needs that we will start to project in our 2029, 2030 years. Then there's At the bottom, there's 3 IT-related items. So security and alarm upgrades, we still have Honeywell systems in a lot of our parks, and we need to get those replaced. So you'll see some cost estimates for those. Changing our network infrastructure from copper lines to, and I'm going to forget the term, anyway, getting rid of the copper lines for the network infrastructure, and then also looking at potentially getting a cloud-based office and call center. And then for enterprise fund stabilization, we still have the sculpture garden, waterworks, and use and event permitting is a new one on here, as changes have been made so that potentially that may not be an enterprise operation anymore if it continues at the rate that it's going. And then, of course, our other issues with youth investment, inflationary cost, the regional system, wood processing, legal fees is on here this year as the complexity and number of cases have increased, and our need to engage with Rice Walther Mosley and other outside attorneys has increased, so have the costs. And then the city, you may or may not be aware of this, but the city has initiated an RFP for a new human resources, payroll, and finance financial system. And that is in the process. We had demos with the first vendor. There's 2 vendors that have come to the top. We saw demos with the first vendor, and then demos with the second vendor are next week. And the HR system will be first. And so that would start to be designed and implemented this year, with going live in 2025. And then the financial system will be started with going live sometime in 2026. So there may be additional administration fees associated with a new software. So this is just a summary of the strategic directions budget action. So these are not all of the budget actions that staff are working on. These are only the ones that have been identified as potentially needing budget needs and requests. So there's a little bit of a description and then the dollar amount associated with the item. So for these, we have 2025 estimated need of just over $1 million, same with 2026. There's a couple of one-time items, so the ongoing costs are just under $1 million, and then $650,000 for 2026. So our general fund budget needs quantified. So in my time here, I haven't ever presented a spreadsheet like this one. And what I can tell you is that we have fully loaded 2025 with all the issues that we know are coming up, all the things that, and then 26 is focused on things that we know are going to be coming online in 2026. So for the revenue, you see the youth funding gap. So we received $260,000 towards the $2.6 million. We'll receive, but the $2.6 million doesn't come to fruition through property taxes until 2027. So in 25, we have a gap of 520, which is the 26 and 27 year of property taxes. And then in '26, we just have the 1 year being reflected. If we don't get property taxes in '25, we will have a gap of 260 in '26. Property tax increment revenue is decreasing, so we put an amount in there, so that's trending actual receipts. Fees and charges, we have a reduction of $150,000. That's directly related to the Minneapolis School Board, and they're not renewing the $150,000 operating payment that they were paying to us for the Phillips pool. So, and then system equity investment, 2025 is Graco, 2026 is Upper Harbor Terminal. And then you're gonna see 4 lines around compensation. So again, as we have heard, we're needing to look at our annual wage increases. We have job reclassifications that have been backlogged that are now being worked on. And then an RFP for a market-based wage study was posted, and we're starting the process to engage with a consultant to do a wage study for the park board as a whole, including provisional staffing. Health insurance benefits, the city is estimating a higher increase in health insurance for next year. And then the state family and medical leave program comes online in 2026, so you see a dollar amount there. And then workers' compensation, with the changes in how the workers' compensation settlements are being structured, particularly for first responders, it's resulted in larger settlements, so we need to increase our workers' comp amount. So now we get into inflation. So we have 2 big items. So we have increased our contractual services, material and supplies, and capital outlay by about 2 to 3% over time. And that has normally met inflation. Obviously, over the last 4 years, the inflation has gone up 22%. And so there is $1 million estimated as a gap in our purchasing power in those line items, which has resulted and will continue to result in decreased services being provided in those areas, particularly in recreation and asset management are being the hardest hit on that. And then, of course, we all know mobile equipment costs have also skyrocketed. And last year, during our budget process, we actually extended the useful life on all our equipment. You don't necessarily want to do that because it defers the replacement and can have increased maintenance costs. So I've put in an amount, we have put in an amount for the mobile equipment. And then you'll see outdoor supervision, the data requests, and legal fees. Those are the outdoor supervision and data request is an estimate. The legal fees is based on what we have budgeted to what we have had in actuals over the last, since 2020. Strategic D staffing requests that remain unfunded. So those are back from the first budget that was adopted by this board, where there were planning project managers as well as a project manager for asset management. So those are being reflected here. And then you'll see the strategic directions being reflected here from the other spreadsheet. So this is a big number, 7.7 million. And again, these are estimates phasing in increases over a period of time is something that is used quite a bit. There could be permanent service reductions that would save money to allow for some of these things to occur. But just know that our general fund, so this is the general fund, 79% of our general fund is property taxes. So that's the largest. We're heavily reliant on that one funding source. Wages and fringe make up 72% of our expenditure budget. So wage settlements, hiring bonuses, different things like that would all come out of that area. A 1% property tax increase would generate about $818,000. So this is added on top of what is currently already estimated for a budget. So with this addition and what's already budgeted, if the 7.7 million stood, we would be looking at a 13 to 14% property tax levy increase. So as we move into the budget retreats, we will start talking to the board around all of these different pressures and all of these different items to make sure that the board, so that we can identify what the board is supportive of and what they're not. And we will be looking at phasing some of these in over time and how that might look and how that might change, knowing that if we do it over a period of time, we're going to have service, we're going to have less buying power, so a decrease in service levels until we can true up those areas. We also have a few one-time cost items, and those are laid out here. So a funding source would need to be identified for these. We have capital outlay budgeted for every department. So potentially we would reduce something in some other area in order to do these one-time items. Or if there was any other one-time money available, we could allocate, or you could allocate those one-time funds to that. And that is my report. And I'll tell you that you have the hard copies. I will email out a copy of the presentation as well as electronic copies of these documents. And all of this will also be posted online at www.minneapolisparks.org/budget.
Well, thank you. Thank you for presentation, a lot of information. Commissioner Olson has a question. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you for this. Maybe I'm starting to understand it more. Maybe the charts are good, but I know I like the way everything's sorted out here. So as we go into the retreat, I'm seeing some categories that say mandate, so those are absolutely not optional. I think it'd be helpful as we make decisions. I mean, a 13 point whatever increase, that's not going to happen, right? So
right.
We're going to have to make some decisions here. But so it would be helpful. So looking at mandates in my head that says we have to do that, it's not an option. And then I'm seeing some other ones like, legal fees that seem like if we don't get those, that could be destructive. I think it'd be helpful for some of these to really have a better understanding of which ones are absolutely not optional, or if we, I mean, obviously we have the option to not fund any of these because we're the board and we can do whatever, but some would have really destructive consequences.
Yeah.
And so if we could maybe have some sort of categories of absolutely have to do this, technically you don't have to do this, but it would be destructive, board directive, staff thing, things that we hope for. Just as we have to decide some difficult things in the future. That'd be helpful. Thank you. This has been
Yep, Chair
very
Rucker
helpful.
and Commissioner Olson. I'll just add to that, as you're looking to finish out the last 2 years of your strategic direction, there may be things, because the current state of affairs, there may be things that you want to slow down on or pause until you develop your next strategic direction. So that's other things that you can be looking at and reviewing and kind of, because we're going to have to prioritize all of these things. And I definitely can provide you what's absolutely necessary and what will be difficult if we don't do it, right? And then, and especially around the annual wage increases, right? We're currently in negotiations, so we don't know where we're gonna settle there. So this 1.2 million may be larger, but we would know those things, hopefully, before you have to pass the resolution around what your maximum property tax request is going to be for 2025. So that's the goal of this, is to try to get us to a point where we understand what property tax levy requests we're gonna ask for and be able to justify our request.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yeah, I guess I'd like a little more clarity around the legal fee increase. I was under the understanding that with the winding down of the encampment situation, there had been a lot of extra fees that had been attributed to that area from external sources from 2020. So you mentioned you looked backwards on what we had been paying for legal. I'm just wondering if looking backwards was an inflated number due to that issue.
Chair Rucker and Commissioner Schaefer, I can go back and look, but there just seems to be, the big thing was encampments. Then what's our big thing now? Graco was a big thing. So it just seems like we're having these large, complex items come up, and it's different ones each year. So I can go back to 2023 and provide you with information about what were those kind of big drivers of that number for 2023.
Well, hopefully we will not have a situation like the encampment as an ongoing kind of large issue. Yeah, I would like some more background on that. And that was it for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Alper?
Thanks for recognizing me, as I'm not on this committee. I had a few points I just wanted to share. So going through my list, legal fees, I too was surprised to see that increase, and I just want to say that, maybe this is the time to consider changing to an in-house support model. If this is truly how much we're going to be spending annually on legal fees, I would just ask my fellow board members if that's, I don't know if we've done that in the history of the park board. And so anyway, it's just a consideration I'm putting out there. Data requests, I know that there is an administrative policy that the superintendent signed in February of 2024. It had to do with data security and data practices. And that got me thinking about email retention and how we could minimize our retention on email. I don't know what the schedule is on that, but I believe that Metro Transit has a 6-month retention, and I certainly have access to all of my emails from the past 2 years. So that's consideration there, that I'd love to retain only the minimal amount of information per law. And then regarding wages and benefits, I'm pro. We've got to retain our workers, our part-time workers. I think it's really important, the point that one of the people made it open time about how unaffordable it is to live in the city of Minneapolis for many, and that $44 per hour necessary. But at the same time, we cannot raise property taxes more than a nominal amount, because that will in turn increase affordability of living in the city. So I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm pro raising wages, pro thinking about cutting some of our staffing. We're at the highest level that we've been in a long time, and I think it's better that we pay people fairly, and maybe that means that we're not able to have as big a staff, and I think it's a trade-off. And if 79% of our support comes from property taxes, we have to make those difficult decisions, and that's where I would side. Last but not least, the Phillips Aquatic Center, I'm really sad to see, I knew about that $150,000 that wasn't going to be renewed by the Minneapolis School Board with that contract. And I just want to say, as I've told Assistant Superintendent Mimi Kalb, I'm willing to go out to bat for the Phillips Aquatic Center, to speak at the school board meeting, willing to talk to our state representatives, if that would make a difference. I mean, I feel like when we had that joint school board, park board meeting, that we heard so much unity around teaching kids to swim. So I feel like that has an emotional tug on people's heartstrings to try and find that funding, at least that piece of funding, and I'm welcome ideas, and I welcome working with staff on that. That's all I have. Thanks.
Commissioner Menz.
Thank you. I'm not on this, Commissioner Rucker. I'm not on this committee, Commissioner Rucker, but I appreciate the time to speak. So this is really well laid out. I also had a question like my colleagues on the legal fees, but I won't go into that, as we don't know, and I'm sure you'll be getting us some information about that. I am wondering about compensation. So like Commissioner Alper, I'm really supportive of us making sure that we make our workers whole, and that's going to have consequences. What I'm wondering is if in these negotiations or in these processes, a lot of times in my work on the school board and my work with employees who aren't certified, so they might be part-time employees, there's been a lot of discussion around sharing employees as the park board and the school board. And I know that a lot of organizations do this. And I'm wondering how or where we're going with this. And I'm thinking about youth workers specifically. The people who work at the schools helping young people also can then do work at the parks at times. And it seems to me that we don't have enough hours for each one of those people individually, but maybe some collaborative work would help each other out by sharing workers who are working with the school board with young people and then the park board. And I'm thinking specifically maybe Rec Plus, that's come up, or even in rec centers with the connection between a school site and then going to a park site. I could be confusing this issue or conflating it, but it does seem that we're both, with our part-time workers or not certified workers, we're trying to find hours to get them whole, but we're not exploring options to collaborate on those with another bureaucratic institution. And I think that would be wise for us to do, because I think we could find win-wins, and we would have an unintended consequence of also connecting those young people who are in the schools and then getting them directly to the parks. I know that there used to be, transit options for that, vans, like those types of things. How do we do that with the workers? Because maybe it could lower our number and lower the school district's number and keep connection. But I don't know if those things are being explored or not. But that's the one suggestion I have. Any comments on that would be appreciated, and where we're at, and we can talk further.
Vice President Benning.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Co-Chair Rucker. I'm not on this committee, but I did want to ask a couple questions here to Director Wiseman on this this spreadsheet. There are the strategic directions are listed twice, one on the one side and one on the other, and so what's the difference there?
Yep.
And I'm bad at reading, in real time here. And then the other question I would have is, when we move into the budgeting period, whatever these numbers are whatever's behind these numbers, will we get more information about those sort of open items from the strategic directions? Thank you.
Chair Rucker and Vice President Abeni. So the first slide here that I'm showing are the ongoing items. So if you look at the bottom of this sheet, there's just over $1 million for 2025 that is identified as budget needs. Of that, 995 is ongoing, and then 75 is one-time costs. So this,
Director Wiseman, can you, we don't have it on our screens, can you share that with us?
I don't.
There we go. Thank you.
So this slide is the one-time costs. Okay. And then this slide is the ongoing costs.
Okay, that's.
And then, Chair Rucker and Commissioner Abeni, yes, during the budget retreats, we will be able to dig into these a little deeper. Numbers continue to be refined once we find out, what the board is going to support, and start working on what the actual budget might be. Again, these are estimates. They'll be refined, and by the time we get to a maximum property tax levy request, we would be able to identify the exact need and calculations behind them.
Commissioner Alper. Commissioner Schaefer.
I had a question back to some of the shortfalls that we heard around property tax defaults. Have you kind of built into this kind of a cushion, or how are you viewing that moving into this budget cycle? Is that gap made up in this little chart, and does it also include a gap for what might be forthcoming? And what does that number look like?
Yeah. So Chair Rucker and Commissioner Schaefer, the issue that we had at the end of 2023 with our property tax collection rate being 97% was due to the tax court settlements that happened during 2024. So it was already property taxes that were levied, but property owners aren't having to pay for them. So that's why we had the difference at the end of 2023. We're watching 2024. We get our first property tax payment in June or July. And so once we get that first payment, we'll be able to see if we're seeing any issues with 2024. But what's happening is people are appealing their values. And so once those appeals are done and a property has a new value, then it's spread, our property tax levy is spread over that base. And we feel that by 2025, we'll be back having a normal collection rate. So we have not built in anything in 25 or 26 around property tax collection rates.
Okay, thank you. And then this might be a question maybe to dive into deeper during the budget, but I'm just curious if our enrollment in the rec program has really matched the funding that we allocated for this build out. Was it 4 years ago, 5 years ago? Because I know in some cases we had workers hired prior to buildings and programs being implemented at Whittier at least. And so I'm just wondering if we need to adjust that in some way.
Chair Rucker and Commissioner Schaefer, staff is currently working on a brief youth investment information sheet. And so that information can and will be provided to you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Mans for the second time.
Thank you. As I'm not on this committee, I appreciate the time to speak. So with the youth funding gap that we've heard about since we've been on the board, so that 520,000, if we don't have the free sites anymore, that goes away. Am I correct in assuming that, or is it a little bit more complicated than that?
Chair Rucker and Commissioner Menz, if you went back to pay every site as a paid site, that would help cover that funding gap for that year. That's kind of the short answer to that. I know that staff have a budget action directive that was passed by the board in the budget adoption. So we are working on looking at our recreation programming strategy, free and reduced cost strategy, and kind of doing away with the 3 options that we have and try to develop one option that would work citywide. So you will be receiving information on that during the budget retreats. And again, it's very hard to estimate how much revenue will or will not be generated once we implement that type. You know, we're hopeful that if it's more streamlined, understandable, easy to use, people will do it, be more apt to do it, but we won't exactly know what the potential impacts of that is.
There won't be like a report projecting or anything like that about what that change could entail?
I can try.
Well, I'm not asking you to, Julie. It might not be on you. I think that we sometimes get caught. The youth funding gap, obviously we made some sites free. But from what I hear from the community, that's helpful. It's always helpful to make things free, you know, because people who can't pay it's an option. But I think that we should be also focusing on high value, and that just because things cost a little bit of money, we need to leverage the resources that we have. And I think that, you know, our previous board made things free, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But at the same time, what is the intended outcome and what is the unintended outcome? And if we're not able to provide programming or services for young people in the communities that they live in, that's harmful. So I think that we need to think about value in this instance and not just free. I know it would be hard for us to re-enlist, you know, fees, and that needs to be well thought out and intentional. But I'm not saying it should be off the table, because I think that sometimes value is really, really important for families and people and kids, and that by making it free, we devalue it as well. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining highly valuable and good programming, and that programming doesn't all have to come from us. In fact, a lot of it should not come from us. It should come from groups that come in. So how we create that structure, or how we create something that might be system-wide, I want us to also be thinking about how that impacts partner programs or other programs that might be programming in our site to help minimize that gap as well.
Commissioner Alper, second time.
Thank you. I just wanted to weigh in about fees and programming fees. I just want to remind us all that the people who are property owners in the city of Minneapolis already pay fees for our park system. And so I want us to remember, you know, through property taxes. So I just want us to remember that actual fees are a very small portion of our revenue to fund what we do here. And so I just want us to, again, tread really cautiously on this, because the door has been opened, and things that are free have this mystical value to them. And so beyond the fact that they do provide a very valuable service for many who cannot afford it. So I'm really excited to hear that we're going to create kind of a uniform system for how we can approach that, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. But I do just want to say our sister city across the river, I believe, just decided that all swim lessons in St. Paul would be free. So I think it's really important that we are approaching our services as a service and recognizing that we already have citizens paying significant amount towards our park system, and that we shouldn't be thinking about, frankly, like nickeling and diming them on fees, which again are a small portion of how we fund our system.
Vice President Benning, second time.
Thank you, Co-Chair Rucker. I think that this is a focus area I'm hearing from the dais here on this free programming, because it's been a little bit unresolved. But one question is, I believe in December, Commissioner Musich advanced a resolution that we adopted in December, I believe, with the budget to develop kind of back calculate what are our goals for this program. And I've heard you say, Director Wiseman, that you're going to be looking at maybe a unified system. So I think that, I've heard the word goal. I think that work is still coming, and I think it'll help us understand.
And I'll just point out that it's on page 5 of this document.
Okay.
For the, with the, it's actually the budget action that Commissioner Musich helped draft with Recreation.
Sure.
So that's where that lives in these documents.
Okay. The other thing is, if at all possible, maybe for the budget retreat, even if numbers could be presented high level, just if the scholarship worked at all. I mean, I can see it on ActiveNet. Given a little bit more every time I sign up for pickleball. But anyway, but if we could just get a sense of how that's working. And also, I really support the scholarship model. I know that's tricky, but I do think that there is evidence, last time we talked about this, that programs have people signing up for them, but people weren't participating. And I think that this, having, people have a little bit of, skin in the game for showing up for these activities. And then the last thing I'll comment on is that there still are plenty of free programs and free activities in the parks, lots and lots of those. And so to your point, I totally get what you're saying, Commissioner Alper. That's true. We do pay for this out of our property taxes, the people who live in the city. But there's tons of free access in the parks all over the place. Go to the rink. Well, if we had snow and ice, but go to the rink, there's skates to use, things like that. But there's certain things that have a premium associated with them that might cost a little bit of money, and that model, I think is appropriate. So, okay, thanks.
Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, Chair Rucker. So I am also, along with my colleagues, looking forward to hearing about what staff has come up with in terms of standardizing the way that we subsidize people's participation in programs that we charge fees for at this time. A large part of why the organization has charged fees in the past and continues to do so now is because we are expecting people that are utilizing services that not everyone in the city utilizes to pick up some of the cost to try to keep property taxes in check. I think what we would find out if we tried to provide every single thing that we currently charge fees for no cost, that we would be looking at a significant property tax increase that I doubt the BET would support, nor the mayor, nor the citizens of this city. And that's because not everybody uses the programs that we provide, and they can't. There just aren't enough of them to provide every single person in the city with every single thing that they could possibly desire the park system to give them. It would be very easy for us to just say everything is free. To actually support that with funding at this point in our existence, I believe is impossible. So I would ask us all to bring our critical thinking caps to the table when we start hearing from staff about what they propose and how they propose that we fund that. Because we're going to need to find a balance, and one that is palatable not only to us as commissioners, but also to the BET that helps set our tax levy, and the citizens of Minneapolis that pay taxes, property taxes, so that we're not pricing them out of their homes in order to provide some people with free things.
Superintendent Bangor.
Thank you, Chair Rucker and Vice Chair Benny. Thank you for recognizing me. I do want to just add one comment, and this is a very good discussion, that all the years that I've worked in the park system and what we know as a park, we don't churn away any of our children or our youth. When there were fees and programs, and when I was working in the recreation centers, no child was turned away, whether there was a fee on there or no fee. Every child participated, and that's what the park board provided for our youth. I just want to make sure that when we say free programs, we did the 17 sites. We know that in our centers, that if a child or any family cannot afford the program, we covered that, we took care of that, because we want to make sure every child had access to the opportunity. So I want to make sure as we have this discussion, I've never turned away, our staff, turned away a child because there was a fee attached. We funded through scholarships, fee waivers, many different ways that we were able to address that. And as we go back and we talk about how we're going to align that, I think that's very important. But I just wanted to share that this organization has always made available to our young people programs, period.
Seeing no other lights, no more questions. Commissioner Schaefer.
I just have one, it's my third time, but I haven't used all my time. I have a quick question just looking forward for Director Wiseman. Do you have just a rough high level as far as what happens on the 17th and what happens on the 1st? This is a lot of material for us to kind of chew on. So can you give us any overall direction on focusing our efforts between those two meetings?
Chair Rucker and Commissioner Schaefer, we will be sending out agendas ahead of time with kind of things that we want you to focus on for the first one. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know that we're going to be reviewing the 3 study reports. We're going to be we'll be focusing on the strategic directions and what is needed to meet those goals by the end of 2026. And if any of those should change or be adjusted. And then we will be doing kind of our fund projections. So you saw the history. Last year I did the history and the projections at the same time. So this year you saw the history, and on the 17th you'll start to see the 5-year financial projections. And that's where we can start to play with numbers and see how it impacts property taxes.
Seeing no more lights, thank you, Director Wiseman, for the presentation. At 6:32, Administration and Finance Committee is adjourned.
And with that, I'm noting the time is 6:32. I'd like to call the Planning Committee to order. Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Commissioner Rucker.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Alper.
Here.
Chair Abeni.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, and I'll note that Vice Chair Becca Thompson is not here. Would someone please move the agenda for approval?
I'll move.
Is there discussion about the agenda? All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The agenda is approved. There's one set of minutes to move. Would somebody read the date and remove the minutes, please? We are looking for paper.
Sure, I'll move the minutes from March 20th, 2024.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The minutes are approved. Okay. We have a couple of action items tonight. Would someone move the first resolution, please?
Yeah, I'll move Resolution 2024-71, resolution approving a programmatic agreement among the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, St. Paul District, the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, and the City of Minneapolis regarding conveyance of federal property at the Upper St. Anthony Falls Lock and Dam, Minneapolis, and Edmond County, Minnesota, wherein the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board is identified as a concurring party.
Thank you. That is now, we're now moving, move that topic for discussion, and I know I'd like a presentation on this one. So here comes Assistant Superintendent Michael Schroeder. Welcome.
Chair Benning and Commissioners, this is an item where there is a significant amount of context that I'll try and offer tonight for what amounts to kind of a small decision, and I'll highlight that as we get into it. But I want to note at the beginning that when this agreement is referenced as a programmatic agreement, it doesn't have to do with programs or services. It's just the name of the instrument used by the Corps of Engineers relative to the Section 106 process, and I'll try and explain that as we get into this. I'm going to start with this, and this relates to what used to be called Friends of the Falls and the conveyance of the property around the lock and dam. So the meaning of this was essentially turbulent waters or to befriend, and then pronounce. See, I did this so well this afternoon. Awamni Okodayapi. I actually did it so much better earlier. But to be fair, even in the group meetings that we've been having, they refer to themselves often as OO, and I'll probably be doing that as we go through this process tonight. And as we get better with it, hopefully we will become familiar with the proper pronunciation and can move forward. So the programmatic agreement, this is not the conveyance of property. This is a tool that's made necessary by this Historic Preservation Act, Section 106, which we've talked about before, of the National Historic Preservation Act, that results from the need to protect cultural historic resources from a federal action. So this is all about it's a foundational action supporting the eventual conveyance of the property, the federal property, to some other entity. And the conveyance, if you were to read through this 40-some page document, they refer to the undertaking. The undertaking is actually the conveyance, the transfer of property from the federal government to another entity. The conveyance is a conveyance to the city of Minneapolis, and as we've been moving through this, it's clear the intention of the city of Minneapolis is to eventually transfer this land to OO. And as I mentioned, OO is the former Friends of the Falls, which intends to implement a project focused on the river with guidance from Native voices. And they've been doing that for some time now. The federal property lies within the boundary of the Central Mississippi River Regional Park. On the right, we show the bounds, and the pullout is the area around the falls. And the lock and dam in particular. On the diagram on the left, it shows in green is the property that's subject to the conveyance. And I'll note that significant areas of the portions to be conveyed, the land area, not the lock area. The land areas have an easement in favor of the park board for trail and roadway purposes. And that we've asked that you'll see as we move through this, that will be perpetuated. Importantly, the conveyance does not include what we've been referring to as vertical construction. So the masses of concrete lock and dam that are out there are not part of this. It doesn't include MPRB's island. If you look on the diagram, I don't know if this is actually an island. It's actually an area that's separated by two tail races, but this area right here is not subject to the conveyance. That's park board property and fee title. And it doesn't include Waterworks Phase 2. And I noted already the need for respecting our easements. As part of what has been going on over the last couple of years, the program, the investigation supporting the conveyance has been going on for some time with the Corps of Engineers. And I'll get back into the programmatic agreement. But we've also been talking about what it means for this property to be conveyed to another party. And this is a separate action that will be coming to the city and eventually to the park board. And we don't have the formal agreement yet, that would define how OO will receive these lands, as the city's designee in this conveyance process. But there are some threshold issues that have to be satisfied. And I'm going to walk through these quickly now, and we can get into them in more detail when this actual agreement comes forward. But again, it's providing significant context for the action related to the programmatic agreement. So the property has to be replatted. It'll be federal property that's conveyed, but it's actually in several different formats right now, so it would be replatted into a single ownership. The schematics of the proposed development, the capital and 10-year operating performance have to be presented to the city. The easement will be granted the park board to enter upon the property if there's a material breach. That's a significant thing for us because we own so much land near and surrounding this. And this should be, the city objectives will be continuously met. That the lock property will be secured and maintained for public access. This is going to be publicly accessible, like our parklands in the central riverfront. It's not going to be used for hydroelectric purposes. The land will be consistent with community engagement goals that were defined in the earlier stages, what they call season 1 of the engagement that the OO has been leading, as well as all the city zoning code and the comprehensive plan. The property will be governed by the zoning code. All easements running in favor of the city or the park board will be perpetuated. There's also some things related to the park board that are specific to the park board. We'll have an ongoing right to approve any future conveyance so long as each of the 4 Dakota nations that have participated so far have been given a right of first refusal. So this is if OO, who the property is conveyed to, for some reason just determines a need to transfer it to another entity, the park board would be able to step in if each of the 4 nations decide that they don't want to receive it, and the objectives are still being met. And if those instances come true, if no entity has an interest in purchasing the locked property, the fail-safe or the safety net is the park board will have an option to purchase this property at some point in the future. We've identified it as based on the fair market value of the property or an amount that OO has spent. It's really indeterminate what that will end up being, but I think in this case everyone wanted to make certain that the property couldn't be transferred to another entity without the park board first having an opportunity to secure it and make it a part of the Central Riverfront Park. And now we get back to the programmatic agreement. So this is the tool that's being used by the Corps of Engineers to identify any historical or cultural resources, to assess impacts, and then to mitigate those. It's important because there are evident within an area of potential effect, I'll get to that in a minute, resources that are known and visible. But as OO undertakes the process of converting the land to another use, there may be other resources that are revealed, and the federal government, the Corps of Engineers, requires a way of being able to assess those for their impacts within this what they call the area of potential effect. This document has several signatories to it: the Corps of Engineers, Minnesota, the SHPO, the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, and the City of Minneapolis, and the primary work is directed to those entities. It also includes several Indian tribes as consulting or concurring parties, and then the park board, because we own the parkland surrounding the National Park Service, the DOT, OO, and the Heritage Preservation Commission are concurring parties to this agreement. And I noted already that this is a foundational effort supporting the eventual conveyance. This is the area of potential effect. This is the larger area that things that might go on in the land surrounding the lock and dam might have an impact upon. This was determined by the Corps of Engineers in consultation with the Historic Preservation Office. So this is the area when you look at the ongoing assessment of adverse effects, that they will be looking through this entire area as new things are revealed for effects and eventually mitigation. So the concurring parties, this is where the park board comes into this. We're not a signatory, we're not a consulting party, we are a concurring party. But we would be indicating our support for the work and the ongoing efforts that might include some staff time to review and assess impacts. There's no financial commitment. And then this is the part where we get to kind of the significance of this. If we choose not to execute this, all of this would still be going on. It's just that we would not be directly apprised of the efforts and the ongoing work surrounding it. So there's probably questions left in there, and I'm glad to do my best to try and answer them.
Thank you for the presentation. So let's open this up for discussion and questions. President Forney.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm not in this committee. Thank you for letting me speak. This is very exciting. This is unique and historic is really what it is. Can you give me an example of what one of the impacts that might cause this to all happen?
Chair Benny and President Forney, maybe by comparing it to other projects that the board has had to deal with. So Section 106 was important, and along with 4F, when we looked at things, for instance, along the Kenilworth corridor with the introduction of LRT, and in particular, let's say the bridges that cross the Kenilworth Channel. Those were assessed because they were different than what was there before, and they would have an impact on, from a viewshed perspective, of people who are using parkland, park users. Even people who might look down the corridor from Cedar Lake Parkway could have the impact of those new bridges would be different as their experience in the Grand Round occurs because of the new bridges that were there. If you remember before, there was a single large trestle bridge. Now there are actually 3 separate bridges that have been designed to be compliant with that Section 106 process. So that's kind of how they look at this. They look at what are the resources. In that case, it was the Kenilworth Channel and the experience of park users. The impact was the removal of a bridge that had been there for a long time, and the mitigation was to design a bridge in that particular case that had fewer impacts on people who were using the channel. So it can be that broad, looking even at like the visual impacts of a change on the property. And I think that's particularly why, I think that's why the area potential effect is so broad, because this area is viewable from bridges surrounding, from many areas, that if there's a significant change on this property with construction or revealing of some other artifact, that its visual quality might be, the visual quality of the area might be impacted from a large kind of panoramic view of the whole area, I guess.
Very exciting. Thank you.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you. I'm not on this committee as well. That partially answered my question. So they actually do look at the design that would be implemented in this conveyance. They actually take a look at the actual plan design and how any potential river reroute or something might affect all that surrounding map.
Chair Benny and Commissioner Schaefer, that's my understanding, and that will be important. And you noted one thing about a river reroute. There probably won't be a rerouting of the river or a change in the way the water moves over the horseshoe or the straight dam, but there is the potential, based on the earlier concepts that were developed by OO, of redirecting a small amount of water to the tail races so that the idea of turbulent waters, Owamni Omni, is maintained even in the tail races where there probably was turbulent water moving at one point. The whole, if you go back through the engagement that was done in what they call season 1 as we move into season 2 as they describe it. Season 1 was about engagement, and it was about the character and quality of the river, and the Native people said this is about moving water. And when they find water that's still, it doesn't resonate with the character that existed here from their time of importance.
Great, thank you. And then just kind of overall direction, big picture for me, the overall plan is that OO would design, fund, build, and maintain the parameters of that conveyance in perpetuity.
Chair Benny, Commissioner Schaefer, yes, except the perpetuity part of it, because there is that provision that will come in the term sheet that will allow some evolution if it becomes necessary.
Right. Thank you.
You know, I love the piece about moving water that you just said, because the first thing I thought about is essentially conveying water, moving water from this place to that place, you know, with man-made mechanisms. But what you actually mean is water that is moving through a landscape or through in this case, a stream bed, a riverbed. It's a different way of thinking about it, and I think it's great. So, Commissioner Menz.
Yes, thank you for, I'm not on this committee, so thank you for letting me speak. On that plate, like what was just pictured right at this foot of the stone arch, what is the current, maybe you don't know this, Michael, what is the current maintenance plan for that area down there? I've had some questions about that in my district, and as we're talking about this, I've explained it's a very complicated project, but what is the current maintenance plan that we have? And maybe that's a question for Jeremy.
Well, Chair Benny, Commissioner Menz, I think you're referring to the area that we call Lower Father Hennepin Park. And the master plan does call for improving the trails and the bridges, the steps that run down through that area. They're in some cases very degraded or completely missing. It's also a portion of the river another portion of the river where it's essentially a backwater. It's not the turbulent waters of the river that you would expect. There was at one time something called the East Falls, and the park board does have in its plans an idea about reintroducing flow over the East Falls that would create some movement of water through this area. So the basic notion in the Central Riverfront plan is to maintain it in its wild state, improve connections for people so they can move down and through there easier, and if it ever happens that we can reestablish some flow over the East Falls, to work to do that.
It's an amazing space. For if y'all haven't been there, it's closed usually.
Okay. Well, it looks like no one else has any questions or comments. Thank you very much for the presentation. So with that, we have to vote on our resolution. So all those in favor of approving Resolution 2024-71, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That resolution passes. Would someone from the committee please move the next resolution?
I'll move Resolution 2024-70, resolution approving encroachment license for use of 29 square feet of land in front of the subject property at 1261 West Minnehaha Parkway, encroaching upon parkland at Minnehaha Parkway within Minnehaha Parkway Regional Trail and collecting all appropriate fees associated with this encroachment.
Thank you. So I'll just comment that this is in my district, and this is the one where on the main agenda we proceeded to terminate the previous permit, but this is now a new, I think, and final agreement. And as part of this, there's a smaller footprint of encroachments that will be under permit, and then there'll be some items that are really unpermitted encroachments that the property owners will be moving to remove. And so I think this is really we're finally there. So I'm pretty happy about this. So are there any other questions or comments? Okay. So all those in favor of Resolution 2024-70, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That resolution passes. President Forney wants to say something?
Yes, we should have said it in petitions and communications and everything, but I'd like to acknowledge an employee that I've known for quite a few years that is going to be retiring or moving on to another position at another community. And so really, I want to thank Larry for your service for 25 years? Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate all that you've done. And we'll miss you, but we seem that we might see you around the block.
Thank you, President Forney. And with that, I will adjourn the Planning Committee meeting. Thank you.
Oh, Jennifer, you're going to jump. Yes, exactly. It was so short. Hey.